Poland is not to be messed with. That's the message that the Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk has delivered as he pledges to make Poland the owner of Europe's largest and most powerful army. This isn't mindless chest-puffing. Poland doesn't want to just be the strongest for the sake of it. The monster army that is in development is being built up so that it will leave Russia terrified. The numbers are insane. The project is ongoing. Poland is already strong, but it's quietly building itself up into the true powerhouse of Europe. Our army, our armed forces, will soon be the largest in Europe, Tusk declared, as he stood proudly to deliver a speech at the August 15th Polish Military Day parade. That parade was a record breaker in its own right. Tusk had just watched a procession of 300 armored vehicles and 2,000 soldiers pass by when he delivered his remarks, and he continued, adding, "We can already say that we are building a force that will determine the fate of the region with its modernity and sheer numbers, and the entire world appreciates this, especially our allies." An important point delivered. For Poland, becoming the strongest force in Europe isn't about dominance or holding its might over its allies. That's a Russian approach, and Poland wants to be anything but Russian in the way that it handles its military. The Polish plan is to be one of the most powerful parts of a larger whole that is designed for two reasons. One, scare Putin straight, and two, if that fails, be ready to fight tooth and nail to stop Russian aggression. If there is any doubt that Poland has Russia on its collective mind as it builds Europe's largest army, then Tusk puts those doubts to bed. He mentioned Russia by name as he spoke about the outside forces attempting to influence Poland, despite Russia being the obvious enemy creeping up to the doorstep. You know those forces, those political parties, those politicians who want to convince Poland and Poles that our main problem is Europe, that Ukraine is our enemy, that the European Union is unnecessary, and Germany is our greatest enemy, Tusk declared during his speech before immediately rubbishing all of these claims and pointing the Polish finger of blame at Putin. And somehow they forget about Russia, the neighbor, the dangerous neighbor, who is waging war just beyond our borders, and sometimes this war even encroaches upon our borders. Saying that the Ukraine war is encroaching on Poland's borders is an understatement. It's more like exploding. That's what a Russian Kh-101 cruise missile did after flying 90 kilometers into Poland. Thankfully, the explosion happened in an empty field, and the missile was shadowed by fighter jets as soon as it entered Polish territory. Still, it's clearer than ever that Russia is a threat to Poland. The Kremlin continues to deny that the missile was Russian. It denies involvement, even as the missile has been identified. But this incident only reinforces Tusk's point that Poland transforming its military into Europe's largest isn't just about Poland. It's about everybody that faces the Russian threat. Real alliances and sensible foreign policy, covering the Baltic region, Poland's own eastern shield, existing defense treaties, and especially Ukraine, are all part of making Poland stronger, Tusk declares. It's a symbiotic relationship. As Poland's might grows, so does the strength of its allies and vice versa. And all of this is in service of the key point that Tusk made as he railed against the Russian threat. Poland doesn't want to go to war, but only the strong are able to prevent war. Or in Tusk's words, only those who are strong, well-prepared, truly independent and sovereign will avoid war. These are all grand declarations made by a man who has a vested interest in making Poland appear as strong as possible, both to Russia and to the nation's own allies. But Tusk's words aren't bluster. There is no braggadocio here. Tusk has told the world that Poland is building a monster army that is the stuff of Russian nightmares. The numbers across the board back him up. Let's start with Poland's land army. As the Washington Times pointed out in a May 20th piece, Poland's Deputy Minister of National Defense, Paweł Zalewski, has already pointed out that Poland leads the way in numbers and capabilities when it comes to land warfare. "We have the biggest land NATO army in Europe with the biggest capabilities," Zalewski said, adding, "We are taking lessons learned from Ukraine. It shows that a country at war must have very short supply chains, so we're investing in this capability also." Manpower alone is a major factor for Poland. In an August 17th article, the Defense Post revealed that Poland's armed forces now have 220,000 active personnel for the very first time, following a recruitment drive that has added 5,000 more soldiers since the beginning of 2026. 156,000 of those soldiers are professionals in the Polish army, another 40 serve in the country's territorial defense forces, and the rest are assigned per what the outlet calls other active duty arrangements. And this is just the start of growth in Polish manpower. Poland aims to have 300,000 active military personnel by 2035, representing the tripling of the size of a force that stood at 99,000 soldiers back in 2014. By 2039, Poland aims to have an army that is 500,000 personnel strong, broken down into 250,000 operational troops, 50,000 territorial soldiers, and 200,000 people serving in the reserves and ready to call up when needed. Massive investment will be required to build all of this, and Poland is spending the money, as you'll soon discover. But the largest European land force isn't just about the soldiers, it's also about the equipment. Poland's goal is to have more battle tanks by 2030 than the combined forces of France, Italy, Germany, and the UK. Contracts have already been signed for many of these tanks, including an order of 250 M1A2 Abrams tanks from the US that cost Poland $4.7 billion back in July 2021. These aren't any old tanks. They are among the most advanced main battle tanks in the world, and they've proven themselves effective against Russia in Ukraine. Poland has also bought refurbished tanks, including 116 M1A1 Abrams in a $1.4 billion deal back in January 2023. Combined, these tanks replace the 240 or so Soviet-era models that it gave to Ukraine to battle back against Putin. Add to this a massive plan to acquire up to 1,000 K2 Black Panther tanks from South Korea, starting with an initial $3.4 billion order for 180 tanks, and you get a formidable tank force designed to counter Russia's favored method of war, a fight fire with fire approach to be taken against a Russian nation that prefers ground warfare, but has already burned through almost 12,300 tanks in Ukraine and is resorting to ancient and decrepit Soviet-era models. Speaking about taking on Russia at its own game, Poland is also pulling ahead of the rest of Europe on the artillery front. Russia loves artillery. Before it was forced to accept that drones are as important as they've become in Ukraine, Russia's entire approach was built around artillery. This Russian god of war, as Business Insider dubs it, is the only reason why Russia has been able to advance as far as it has in Ukraine, as its methodical approach of getting into artillery range, pounding away at fortifications, and then moving forward formed the backbone of the country's entire strategy during the first few years of the war. Poland has seen Russia's propensity and realized that the fire-with-fire approach works once again. It has spent around $5 billion to buy more than 360 K9 Howitzers from South Korea. And that's only the start of Poland hoovering up as much artillery as it can get its hands on to combat Russia. Poland also builds its own artillery system, the AHS Crab, which appears to be built at a rate of around 50 units annually, with capacity to expand. But this is all tube artillery. Poland also needs multiple launch rocket systems, so it's getting its hands on those types of systems too. 2023 saw Poland receive a delivery of 20 US-made HIMARS systems under a $414 million contract signed 5 years earlier. Again, this is battle-tested equipment in Ukraine that Poland knows will be effective against Russia. More HIMARS are coming, 486 of them, per a framework deal worth around $10 billion that Poland signed with the US back in September 2023. If Russia's way of war involves brutal and grinding land campaigns, then Poland is going to be ready. It'll bring the soldiers, tanks, and artillery that many of its NATO allies don't have, and that's only the beginning. The numbers only get more insane from here. But before we go deeper, this is a reminder that you are watching The Military Show. If you're getting insight from the channel, don't forget to subscribe and enable notifications to see more. Defense is just as important to Poland as offense, and there are two areas in which Poland has been investing to boost what is already the largest ground force Europe has to offer: air defense and the Eastern Shield. On the air defense front, Poland has been hoarding Patriot missile interceptors, which is precisely what it needs to deal with the Russian ballistic missile threat. Back in 2018, Poland created the Wisła program, which essentially amounted to the purchase of a pair of Patriot missile batteries along with a bunch of missiles. Poland spent $4.75 billion to get its hands on this Patriot hardware. 2 batteries amounts to 4 fire units, 16 launchers, and per this particular deal, 208 PAC-3 Patriot missiles. And this was just Phase 1 of the program. Phase 2 will see Poland spend another $15 billion on 6 Patriot batteries, which means 48 launchers and another 644 PAC-3 missile interceptors. Poland will also be getting the Ghost Eye radar as part of this second phase, which improves Patriot detection and tracking. If you're wondering how Poland was able to respond so quickly to the Russian missile that flew into its territory in late July, This radar might well be the answer. Poland is also investing heavily domestically and in drones to boost its air defense further. In October 2025, Poland poured over $700 million into expanding the production capacity of its 4 leading air defense manufacturers, who combine to build Narew air defense systems and the radars that go along with them. Narew gives Poland short and mid-range options to deal with aircraft, missiles and drones, complementing the longer-ranged Patriot. January 2026 also saw Poland spend $1.67 billion on a contract with the Norwegian defense company Kongsberg Gruppen for coastal missile defense systems. Again, this is a case of Poland seeing what Russia does and reacting to it. This time, rather than fire with fire, Poland sees Russia's reliance on missile and drone swarms in Ukraine, and it's building its own layered air defenses to counter that approach. Then there's the other aspect of Poland's defenses, the Eastern Shield. This shield is all about guarding the borders that Poland and the Baltic states share with Belarus, Russia, and the Russian exclave of Kaliningrad. And this particular aspect of Poland's military buildup is very much a work in progress. Poland has 700 kilometers of borders with Russia or Russian allies that it needs to build up. By the end of 2026, it intends to have about 200 kilometers of that border secured with a combination of linear fortifications, what Colonel Marek Pietrzak of the Polish Armed Forces calls border blocking infrastructure, and seals for roads and rail crossings that will prevent Russian forces from using them. Polish authorities are also purchasing land at a rapid pace to make these border defenses possible, having purchased 38 properties in 2025, with plans to buy another 150 across 52 locations in 2026. Anti-drone fortifications are also being set up alongside the fences and spools of barbed wire. Machine guns, cannons, and jamming systems to deal with missiles and drones have all been mentioned, per a December 2025 article in The Guardian. Add bunkers, trenches, anti-tank barriers, and AI-powered command centers into the mix, and you get a massive border project. The intended completion date is 2028. The total estimated cost to Poland is $2.55 billion. What we're seeing in all of this is twofold. First, Poland is building a vast military ecosystem that extends far beyond its borders. Second, Poland is putting its money where Tusk's mouth is, with vast spending commitments. You don't get to have Europe's largest army without pouring billions upon billions of dollars into building that army. And you also don't get to level up that army in terms of equipment and capabilities without building a strong defense ecosystem. It's two sides of the coin that Poland wants to ram down Putin's throat. When it comes to the ecosystem, you've seen examples of how that's been growing already. We mentioned purchases from the US and South Korea, showcasing how Poland is willing to look beyond Europe to create the strongest army in Europe. Poland is also working with Norway. It's buying sensors and reconnaissance equipment from both the UK and Israel. There is more beyond what we've already mentioned. 36 FA-50PL aircraft from South Korea, mounted with Phantom strike radar and capable of firing US-made AIM-120 AMRAAMs. A memorandum of understanding signed with Sweden in 2025 will see the two nations work together to get their hands on A-26 submarines that Poland can use in the Baltic Sea and beyond. Over and over, we can see Poland building ties, buying weapons, and building a military that is designed to counter everything that Russia can throw at it. Over the last 5 years, Poland has been NATO's largest arms importer, Notes from Poland reports. That statement is built on data provided by SIPRI, which shows that Poland accounted for 3.6% of global arms imports for the period between 2021 and 25. The US came second with 2.9%, and there were even wider gulfs between Poland and the UK, Germany and the Netherlands. There are non-NATO nations that import more. Ukraine tops the entire list, accounting for 9.7% of imports. But then Ukraine has the only military that's really capable of giving Poland a run for its money as Europe's strongest. And it unfortunately isn't a member of NATO or the European Union, as Poland is. Showcasing Poland's renewed focus on strengthening its military, the volume of arms imports it purchased during the period SIPRI examined is 852% higher than the volume for the previous 5-year period. That's the 5th largest increase among arms importers when considering these two periods, with only Germany, Hungary, Belgium and once again Ukraine ranking ahead of Poland when it comes to percentage boosts in weapons imports. Poland is buying a lot of weapons, is the point we're making. However, and perhaps even more importantly, Poland is integrating itself into the defense ecosystems of nations all over the world. There's no better way to build defensive ties with an ally than to show you trust that ally's weapons enough to spend billions of dollars on them. Money talks, and that brings us nicely to another area where Poland comes out ahead of the rest of Europe in army building. the sheer amount of cash that Poland is splashing on its defense. Poland's defense budget has grown rapidly in line with its army's expansion and the growth in its arms imports. Between 2020 and 25, Poland has gone from spending about $13.6 billion on defense annually to $45 billion. It plans to spend over $55 billion in 2026, representing a quadrupling of expenditure since 2020. Naturally, this also means that Poland is spending more as a percentage of its gross domestic product, or GDP, than ever before. Back in 2020, Poland spent 2.3% of its GDP on defense. Good in the sense that it was above NATO's 2% recommendation, but not spectacular. In 2025, the percentage had risen to 4.3% of GDP following several years of budget increases, spurred on by the beginning of the Ukraine invasion. Poland is also preparing for future spending. Poland has secured a Security for Europe, or SAFE, funding agreement with the European Commission, which will see it receive $50.9 billion as a loan to strengthen its army. Many of Poland's more recent acquisitions are built on the back of this loan agreement, and Poland received the first $7.65 billion it will be getting under the deal at the end of May. More money is coming. That means more growth is also coming to Poland's military. We mentioned Poland putting its money where Tusk's mouth is earlier, and this is what we meant. Out of every European nation that is a member of NATO, Poland is the big spender. And every number, statistic, and purchase that we've mentioned in this video is the outcome of that spending. What we see in all of this isn't just a military bill. It's a culture shift in a nation that was once trapped behind the Iron Curtain and never wants to find itself under Russia's controls again. And the perfect example of this culture shift spreading beyond the military and into Polish society at large comes from the vast civil defense program Poland has launched to accompany its military buildup. In June, France 24 reported that Poland has launched large civilian courses designed to teach everyday people survival skills that they can use during a time of crisis. The first of these programs was launched in November 2025, and it saw Polish Minister of National Defense Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz declare his hopes that 400,000 Poles will have completed the course by the end of 2026. There is no age range. Everybody from teenagers to seniors can take part. And this program serves Poland's purpose of developing Europe's largest and strongest army in a different way. It's preparing the Polish people psychologically for a war that Poland hopes will never come, but it will be ready to fight if it does. That echoes back to Tusk's comments that we shared near the beginning of the video. Poland has turned itself into Europe's powerhouse because it has to. There can be no avoidance of war if you aren't strong enough to show an enemy that you are capable of fighting. That is ultimately what Poland is doing here as it continues to build up. The monster has been created. Right now, that monster is caged, but Poland is making sure that Russia knows about it and that the monster will be unleashed if Russia crosses the line from threats and aerial incursions into full-blown European war. Oh, and there's one more thing that Poland is mulling over. As it builds up its air defenses, the question is being raised by some very prominent politicians: should those air defenses be used to protect Ukraine by destroying Russian missiles as they fly into Ukrainian territory? Check out all of the details of what Poland is preparing to do and what it would all mean in our video. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to The Military Show and enable notifications as we chart how Putin's invasion of Ukraine has created a ripple effect throughout Europe. And thank you for watching.